Support for Alabama Aloud comes from Ernest and Hadley Booksellers of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who strive to provide a unique selection of new, used, and rare books from local, regional, and international sources. Information about online orders at ernestandhadleybooks.com.
From Troy Public Radio, this is Alabama Aloud. I'm Don Noble. Alabama Aloud is the only podcast where you can hear Alabama stories read in their entirety. Today, I'll be reading 4 stories from Daniel Wallace's 2025 collection, Beneath the Moon and Long Dead Stars. The stories are, in the order they appear, Mending Fences the Movie, The Long Road Home is Covered in Limpid Roses, Champions of Literature, and The Men in the Woods. Daniel Wallace, originally from Birmingham, is the author of 6 novels, most famously Big Fish, a children's book, The Cat's Pajamas, and a family memoir, This Isn't Going to End Well. This collection, Beneath the Moon and Long Dead Stars, is his first volume of stories, and they are short shorts, some as short as 1 page, which nevertheless often capture a crucial moment or turning point in the character's life. Mending Fences, the movie. I bought a car from one of those grassy roadside lots, paid in cash that arguably wasn't mine, and disappeared into the night like the smoky tail of a dying match. I was in the next state by morning, at a waffle shop full of truckers and farmers, all of them wearing baseball caps, none of them backward. I turned mine around. I found a booth in the back. Waitress caught my eye and winked. "Be right with you, hon," she said, same as they always do, like it's from the handbook. Tangerine lipstick and penciled-in eyebrows, thin, tinsel gray hair in a ponytail. She was my age, probably, but looked twice that. Weary but indestructible, like she'd been standing up her entire life and would be buried that way too. She walked over to me with the pot, veins like river maps beneath her skin, face that had been through a lot. Too much. But she smiled with a warmth that was so real I felt it in my heart. Name tag, Kate. "Morning, baby. Coffee?" I nodded. She poured. "What can I do for you, sweetie?" Like she might take me in her arms and rock me to sleep. I kept my face low, reading from the menu, but when I looked up to order, her eyes were fixed on me. She blinked once, kept staring. I could see her tongue resting against the top of her bottom teeth, her mouth hanging open just that much. Good Lord, she gave me the once-over twice. Aren't you? I turned away. There was a TV on the wall, and I wondered if I'd been on it already, but nothing I'd done would make the news. That's what I told myself. I thought I was faster than my past, but maybe nobody is that fast. She pointed at me. "You're Dustin." "Dustin? Lord, my brain has gone to mush. I just saw you." Impossible. Never in my life. And I'm no Dustin. "Sorry?" "Last night. The movie. Your movie. Oh, you know. San Francisco Nights with Julia Roberts." An exclamation point like she just won a prize. "Dustin Evers. You are Dustin Evers, and I cannot freaking believe it. Oh, good Lord." Her smile made her makeup flake a little, and her lipstick crack. I shook my head. "I think you have me confused with somebody else." Matter of fact, a little gruff, putting her off without pushing too hard. But her eyes wouldn't let me go. Dustin Evers, I thought. Dustin Evers, the actor. I couldn't see what she was seeing, but I didn't want to get into it. "You got me," I said. I'd seen that movie, too. A pastry chef and a fireman fall in love when her bakery burns down. I shrugged and almost smiled. and she shivered like a woman about to freeze. She motioned a cohort over, a girl who might have been her daughter. Twins, basically, separated by 20 or 30 years. "Lucy," she said in a whisper, "get over here, look at this." Lucy dragged herself over and looked at me with her dull, dead, sleepy eyes. "Hey, sugar," she said. Then to Kate, "What am I looking at?" "You're looking at Dustin Evers," Kate said. "San Francisco Nights?" Lucy took a minute to fall into the magical world Kate made for her, and just like that she was all in. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Oh, wow," she said finally. "Wow, wow, wow." Then, blushing, "I've had a crush on you since I was 12. They laughed. I laughed, like I'd heard it all before. "Well, thank you, I guess," I said. "The camera is kind to me." "God was kind to you," Kate said. "That face of yours is a gift from God." She looked at Lucy and spoke as if I wasn't there. "I don't believe I'm saying this to Dustin Evers. Dustin freaking Evers." "What's she like?" Lucy said. "Julia Roberts. They say she's nice, but I don't know, she might be full of herself." I sipped my coffee and shook my head. "She's an absolute angel," I said. "Is there a movie around here you're making?" "Yes," I said. "There is, right down the road." "Wow," Lucy said. "Wow, wow." "That how you hurt your hand?" She was addressing the bloodlines on my knuckles. "Yes, I do my own stunts." His own stunts! Lucy and Kate, did they ever have a story to tell now? "What's it about?" Kate said. "Yeah," Lucy said. "What's it all about?" What it's all about. Philosophers now. Well, I guess it's about a man who did some things he wished he hadn't done, tries to run away from it all, meets a woman on a farm who sees him for who he could be, deep down, then hires him on to mend fences, and they, well, you know. Sounds like my kind of movie. What's it called? Mending Fences, I said, and I saw it unfolding before me. The woman on the farm, tall, copper hair, a widow maybe, tough, unyielding eyes at first, but deep pools of goodness and almost spiritual power. Me working the land for her, sleeping in the barn on a bale of old hay, her scraggly mutt, my first best friend. That mutt follows me around everywhere, and I was milking cows, riding horses, saving her life from that snake, a rattler, that almost bit her. How we picnicked beneath that big old oak tree, the one her granddad planted 100 years before, and then how one night we heard a pack of coyotes howling in the far fields, and went to check on a heifer, and chased those coyotes away, and I kissed her beneath a sickle moon, and finally I told her everything I did leading up to the night I got that car from the roadside lot. All of it. I couldn't live that lie a minute longer, but figured when I told her she would leave me, and she almost does. She almost leaves me, but she doesn't, and she says to me, "Hun, sweetheart, sugar, baby, damn it if I don't love you. But you got to go back and make things right. You have to go back before we can move forward into whoever we're going to be, into the rest of our lives together." And so, in the movie, I do. I go back, and I see the girl who left me, and I hurt the man she left me for, and tell my mom and my dad how sorry I am for all the trouble I've caused them all of my troubled life, and I do what I can to make it right. And then I come back to her, and she takes me in her arms, and the music swells, and finally, I'm happy. We're happy. And that's why it's called Mending Fences, I said. I told them the whole thing. And by the time I was done, I was surrounded by the truckers and the farmers and a short-order cook to boot. They loved Dustin so much. Someone even bought him breakfast. And then it was over. I told them I had to get back on set. But I want to thank the Academy and my amazing director and Julia for being the best co-star a guy could ever ask for. But more than all of them put together, I have to thank Kate and Lucy for that morning, for the greatest gift I ever got in my life, to be another man for just a few minutes, to be famous for not being me. The long road home is covered in limpid roses. My father, old, alone, penniless, 6 or 7 warrants out for his arrest, came to stay with me for what turned out to be the rest of his life. He'd lived under a dozen aliases in his 71 years, but his real name was the one people thought he'd made up, Teddy Sandwich, like the Earl, he was fond of saying, right before he stole your watch. He hadn't changed much since the last time I saw him a decade ago, worn and grizzled as an interstate exit hobo, shoes that looked like socks, and a twitch he'd had since licking an electrical outlet on a bet. He flopped on the couch, lit a cigarette after I asked him not to, and apologized. "I'm sorry, kid," he said. "You really don't deserve this. And by this, of course, I mean me." And what could I say? He was right. I'd lived a good life. I was a middle school science teacher, track coach, advisor to the school paper, the Plucky Lion. I didn't date much because no woman could live up to my impossibly high standards. I was lonely in a virtuous way. Then he narrowed his eyes. "But I guess this is what you get for killing your twin." "Killing my... Dad, please, Jesus." He made this kind of stuff up all the time, just to put you back on your heels. What a terrible thing to say. "In the womb," he said. "You killed him in the womb. For God's sake, enough." He shrugged. "Whatever. Bottom line is, you're all I got." And then, under his breath, "Murderer." My father was the worst, frankly. Maybe even the worst of the worst. I knew him some because my mother made me stay with him a couple of summers while she pursued a modeling career in Japan. She was on billboards for Suntory whiskey, from Nagoya to Niigata. I hated every minute of being with him. My whole life since then, I'd ask myself, what would my father do? And then I'd do exactly the opposite. Sporting his vices like a new silk jacket, he bilked old ladies out of minor fortunes, sold non-existent beachfront real estate, and smoked like a California wildfire, like he got paid per cigarette. One always hung from the side of his mouth like a malignant appendage, or smoldered on a dinner plate, on the television set, whatever was handy. As if water were too rare and precious a commodity to be used for mere vanity, he rarely bathed. He slept whenever he had a notion to, sometimes from noon to 4, or 3 in the morning to 5, up before dawn. And he sleepwalked, wandering around the house muttering words he'd never use awake. Subterfuge, elegant fornicators. The long road home is covered in limpid roses. He had a scary charm. My mother said people gave him money just so he wouldn't wreck their lives, which he could do with a phone call. You could tell this was something he would be good at. He brought home stray dogs, 1 a week or so, and some dogs who were not strays at all, dogs whose collars he'd remove and toss into the gutter. He loved dogs more than me, and he'd be the first to admit it. I was once bitten by a vicious basset hound he nicked from a schoolyard, and my father rushed to its aid, lickety-split. "Are you okay, buddy boy?" "It bit me, Dad," I said, as I bandaged my hand with a sock I found under the coffee table. "I was just going to pet him." "I wondered what it was you did," he hissed, "and don't look at me that way." He rubbed the basset's head with a tenderness I never once experienced. "If it's a crime to love dogs, then lock me up." He was locked up on several occasions, but not for loving dogs. He talked crap about my mother. They'd been married for less than a year when she left him, and he never failed to stick a knife in her memory. She asked for a lot, your mom, he liked to say. She wanted to eat my soul. Always up to something, Dad was. One day he took a folding chair to the end of the driveway, wearing light blue boxers and an undershirt and a top hat from his circus days, and told the fortunes of everyone who passed, whether they wanted one told or not. Hey, lady, you're going to find love in the strangest of places, like a parking lot or a public restroom. To a man in a nice suit, you, my friend, are going to lose your hair in a horrific way. And to a dog walking on a leather leash by the old lady who gave apples for treats on Halloween, you're going to be rich one day, my friend. Your owner has more money than sin and not a friend in the world. She's leaving it all to you. He once let his head fall face first into a bowl of spaghetti and tomato sauce, and he stayed that way for over a minute. That's a long time to have your face in a bowl of spaghetti. All I have are stories like this about my father, this guy who woke up every morning of his life wondering if he was dead, and discovering he wasn't, just did whatever the hell he wanted to. Because why not? He was alive, and life was a thing to be lived, not fooled around with, not wasted, following rules you don't know who invented them and what their angle was in the making of. If I teach you any damn thing, he said to me one day, the damn thing I would teach you is not to learn any damn thing. It's all just mind control in one form or another. The same way exercise is body control, I said. Exercise being another thing he didn't believe in. He was skinny as a stick. I couldn't see a muscle anywhere on his body, just skin and ribs, a pathetic, flaccid meat sack. There were no rules in his world, no certainties, not even taxes, which he never paid. Just the one thing, death. But that wasn't happening to him either, because here he was in my guest room, lively as hell. How did you find me? I said. Mom wouldn't tell you. Internet at the library. You're the only Theodore Sandwich Jr. in existence, believe it or not. He tried to light a cigarette, but the match died due to his violently shaking hand. Took him 3 tries. Parkinson's, he said. A couple of years, and I'll be as wooden as a cigar store Indian. Native American, I said. A cigar store Native American. Long story short, he was right. Eventually, he just froze up. 2 years later, all he could do was blink. A year later, he died from ossification of the heart. My mother came all the way from Atlanta to see him at the morgue, just to make sure he was dead. He'd often pretended to die, mostly to escape the feds. Mother and I went out to dinner after and celebrated. She was a retired billboard model by then. Still beautiful, just the older kind. We talked about what a terrible man my father was, and how neither of us were sorry that he was dead, not in the least. After living with him for 3 years and doing everything I had to do for him, my heart had ossified too. I paid for dinner, and I walked her to her car. Then I asked her something that had been on my mind for a long, long time. So, Mom, weird question. Did I have a twin? In the womb, I mean. Dad said. She gave me a poisonous look. He told you that? I can't believe he told you that. I know. He said I had a twin and that I killed him in the womb. It's ridiculous. And just like him to say something like that, right? I sort of laughed to get her to look at me, but she wouldn't. Well, thing is, you did kill him, she said. I never wanted you to know and made him promise not to tell you. But you did it. We could see it happening on the ultrasound. The stealthy approach from behind, your little hands around his little neck, The doctor said you were the strongest fetus he had ever seen, that your brother never had a chance. He was smaller than you were, you know, the sensitive one. Really sad and awful." "I did that? Oh my God, that's terrible." "Your father thought it was hilarious, of course." "Hilarious?" "Yes," he always said. "One little sandwich is enough." When we'd go out to lunch, he'd always make the same joke, saying he was thinking about getting a big sandwich, but then he would say, "Maybe one little sandwich is enough," and laugh. He was always making jokes about the brother you killed in the womb, and that's really why I left him." She had her hand on the door handle, her eyes focused on nothing, just thinking, as if she were reviewing the years between then and now. She shrugged and looked at me, I thought, with a mixture of love and pity. It was the way she had looked at me all my life. Now I knew why. "All things considered, you turned out better than I thought you would. Much better." She may have said something else, but my head was all static by then. She kissed me on the cheek and drove away. The Miata backfired as she rounded the corner and disappeared, and somehow I knew I'd never see her again. Spoiler alert, I didn't. The restaurant was just a few blocks from my place, so I walked home. I was in a daze. Felt like she'd bricked me across the temple, so I went the long way, through the nicer neighborhoods, and I took it slow. I had a lot to think about. I was a murderer now, after all. I'd always been one, I guess, but knowing it changed things. It changed everything. I felt like me, but different, a different me. Like me, in many ways identical to me, but being taken over by something strange and foreign. Night had fallen. Light spilled from the windows of the fancy brownstones. Beyond the windows, mothers were putting their children to bed, fathers were putting the dishes away. Happy families. I kind of watched myself watching them, as if I were hovering in the air above me, looking down. And looking down at me, I saw who I was. Just this guy, this lonely nobody with nothing, this murderer, walking down the sidewalk alone. I'd never been so low, not in all my years on this planet. And then I stopped in my tracks, because something came to me, a revelation like the holy men have. And it was this: I was free. There was nothing I couldn't do now. Nothing. I had already done the worst thing a person could do, and so whatever I did from here on out, no matter how bad it was, how crazy, how stupid, how pointless and selfish and destructive, would pale in comparison. I was free, and true freedom is like a superpower. I know that now. It's like being invisible. No one could see me, but oh, I could see myself. I knew who I was. I followed my fate like it was a siren, and from that day forward, I lived and lived and lived, and I watched the incidental damage my life produced pile up in the rearview mirror. I was a sandwich, after all. Theodore Sandwich, Jr., the only one in the world. Champions of Literature. You remember how Josephine prayed? She was always praying. I don't know why she prayed at a writer's conference, but I got the feeling she prayed before doing anything. I closed my eyes and pretended I was too. Who would know different but God, who didn't have a dog in this hunt anyway? I heard an old Hall and Oates song in my head instead, the bouncy one that makes everybody dance. Long before Josephine said, "Amen," I opened my eyes and saw yours were open too. This is how we met, while everyone else was praying. Josephine asked each of us to say a few words about writing, and how others might learn to write, and what it meant to be a writer, And if we wrote in the morning or late at night? You, the poet, went first. I, the story writer, went second. And the man who wrote books about unsolved murders, true crime, went third. Questions? At lunch, Josephine told us stories about her summers on the Gulf, the jellyfish, the first paved roads, the church her great-grandfather built with 3 free black men 100 years ago, swallowed by a sinkhole just last year. No one was hurt. You didn't laugh, because a church built by 3 free black men swallowed by a sinkhole isn't funny. Oh, Josephine, you said, and held her hand, which happened to be resting beside the sweaty water glass on your side of the table. That is almost unbelievably terrible, I said. The true crime writer took a note. It was only later, after Josephine dropped us off at the writer's hotel and the true crime writer left us, that you fell against the stucco walls on the open walkway leading to your room and laughed so hard you started shivering. You ended up sitting down, back against the wall, trying to recover. I picked you up. I had known you for 3 hours, but I picked you up, hands beneath your arms. They say sinkholes are the quicksand of our time, you said. We were on a panel in a half-empty classroom where we gave our talk to the old, the retired, the eager, and I'm pretty sure the unhoused people who come to these things. Josephine moderated. You talked about black women poets, and I talked about family, because apparently that's all I write about. The true crime writer talked about how truly depraved people could be. There were 9 people there. No one asked questions. They just said what they thought and wanted to hear what we thought about what they thought. All of your characters are so full of longing, one woman said. We waited for the rest of it, but all she said was, I'd like to hear what all of you have to say about that. The true crime writer said, longing for longer lives, you bet. You said, I think all people, and maybe especially black people, live in a state of constant longing. Then it was my turn. I don't know what you mean by longing, I said. It came out sounding smart-alecky and writer-like, though I hadn't meant it to. A little jarring. Oh, you know what she means, you said. I turned to you, far away at the other end of the fold-out table. You looked at me like we had talked about this 1,000,000 times. We had a drink together at the hotel bar before going to the writer's party. You said, my husband watches me disappear into the basement and every couple of years come up with a bunch of poems. He's not sure what happens, or how it happens, or whether it's a good thing, but he reads them and says he loves them, all of them, each and every one. I said, I don't have to disappear, but it takes me longer. You smiled. Longer, you said. Long, longer, longing. See what I did there? And I would have said something. I had a repost in my pocket, but the true crime guy was there, and it was time to get into someone's big old car and drive to the house of the woman who was throwing the party for the writers. We all got to go together, walked outside into the Florida night, surprisingly chilly. It's so cold, you said, and me without a coat. I sat in the back seat and stared at the back of your head. You never turned around to look at me, but occasionally you'd look at the true crime guy, and I could catch your profile edged against the lights of oncoming cars. Your face looked like the coast of a country with a long, dark history. I wrote this in my mind and thought I should put that in a story. But then I decided not to, because it sounded like something I would put in a story. It took 15 minutes to get out to this lady's house, and after a while you turned around to me and said, we can hear you thinking. Then the true crime guy said, I was wondering what that sound was. Everyone laughed. It had been a cabin once, this place, and over the years turned into a model home. The walls in the living room were of dark, varnished pine, and the heads of animals kept watch above us, nobly dead. Wine in plastic cups, cheese, crackers, grapes. It was hard to hear anything in the tipsy hubbub. I followed you around like a dog. I didn't know where the true crime guy had gone. A couple of times you caught my eye and said something with them, cracking a smile, that thing people who knew each other do, but I'd only known you 6 or 7 hours at this point and played it safe and offered a non-committal nod. Josephine waved at us, but she was too far, cornered in a crowd, and couldn't get over. You winked at her. We'd been asked to introduce ourselves to the hostess, Mrs. Murphy, a champion of literature. A widow, snow-white hair, big pearls, warm gray eyes. She was so nice and treated us as if we had a pedigree. She took our hands in her own, one each, as though she were leading horses into a stall, took us to her bedroom and closed the door, and the din behind it died. "This is where I live, for the most part," she said. She had a big fat bed with wooden bedposts and doilies on her bedside table. On the other side, a stack of books high as a third grader. I saw my book, and I saw yours. None by the true crime guy. The room was full of fresh flowers, and on top of her dresser, a herd of ceramic animals. Elephants and zebras, but others more exotic, like a mandrill. You could see the outline of her body on the bed, where she spent her life reading, and the window looking out into a garden. There was something perfect about this room. "Can we live with you?" you said, laughing, and I laughed, but Mrs. Murphy did not. She was old and sweet and a little crazy. "Of course you can, dear," she said, and I really think she meant it. "That would be lovely." And she looked from me to you. "But don't you have a home of your own? A family?" We did, of course, just not the same ones. We went back to the hotel together, hitching a ride with a reader. You invited me to your room for a drink, and I said maybe I'll just go to bed. And you said, "Okay." I gave you my book, and you used it as a doorstop. "In case you change your mind," you said, "I have half a bottle of cheap white wine in the fridge." I changed my mind. A few minutes later, I walked into your room, but I didn't see you. I said your name, but you didn't answer. There was your open suitcase, socks spilling over the top, caught in mid-escape, a laptop with a dark screen, a candy bar. You were out on the balcony, smoking a cigarette, the sliding glass door open a crack. The moon lit up the world, and though there was a beach and an ocean out there, all I could see was you, and I wanted you to turn around and see me, too. But you didn't. You smoked your cigarette, and the smoke was rushed away by the wind, and you stood on your tiptoes looking out at something remarkable, your hair flying like a flag of your own little country. Then I heard you laugh, and the wind took that away, too. The Men in the Woods. The men who lived in the woods behind my house had been getting out of hand for some time. They were all in their mid-50s, golfers formerly, and meat-eaters, jolly men in general, but since their wives had sent them away to live in the woods, they had become grumpy and discontent. At night, they would bellow and howl. They wanted their televisions and ice makers and chairs beside the vents. They lived like animals in badly made straw huts and ate anything that wandered too close to their turf. We knew what was happening to our dogs and cats, but there was nothing we could do. Some of these men were very powerful. All of them belonged to the country club. One night from a window, I saw them leaving the woods and marching, single file, toward my home. They knocked at the door. "What is it?" I said, staring at their wretchedness through the peephole. "What do you want?" "Your telephone," they said. "We'd like to use your telephone." "That's out of the question," I said. "You can't come in. My wife—" "Your wife," one of them said. "She won't allow it." "His wife won't allow it," said another. His wife says no, said another. She must be wonderful, the first one said. Really, I bet she is. She is, I said. My wife is wonderful. We knew your father, one of the men said. You're not your father. Then they went away, grumbling, back into the woods. Later, in bed, I told my wife what had happened. They came here, she said. I nodded. She was appalled. I want you to go down there and tell them not to do that. Tell them never to come here again. Now, I said. It's like midnight. Now, she said, for me. She kissed me on the cheek. I dressed and walked down the little trail that led to the woods behind our house. I saw a light and followed it. My heart was thumping against my rib cage, and I almost turned back. But I reminded myself that I was doing this for my wife. Acts of service were her love language. I saw them just up ahead. They were cooking squirrel around a fire and drinking coffee from old tin cups. They bellowed and wailed, but they seemed to be having a pretty good time. Hey, fellas, I said, and all the bellowing stopped, and they looked up at me and smiled. Please don't come around our house anymore, okay? They looked at each other, then into the fire. Okay, they said, shrugging their shoulders. Fine. It didn't seem to mean that much to them. All they had wanted was the phone. When I turned to go, I could see my house on the hill above me and watched as one light after another was killed, and it was all darkness. It seemed I could even hear the doors shut and lock as my wife prepared for sleep. My house seemed to disappear into the black sky. I paused. Going so soon? One of the men said. The fire was bright, warm. Yeah, said another, and just when we were getting to know you. Today's stories were published in the 2025 collection Beneath the Moon and Long Dead Stars, and are read here by permission of the author. If you enjoyed today's stories from Daniel Wallace, we recommend you check out more stories from this collection, including my personal favorite, Always, which tells the story of a romance from start to finish in just 4 pages. 3 weeks into it, they had a conversation. They were in bed staring at the ceiling, a sheet draped across their chests. She said, out of nowhere, laughing before she said it, "It always starts off like this with me, with a bang." He let that sit there for a second. "What do you mean?" he said. "Always." "What?" "What do you mean? Always?" We hope you don't keep Alabama Aloud all to yourself. Subscribe to our podcast and share it with a friend. Better yet, write us a review in the iTunes store. It helps other people find the podcast. Also, give us a shout-out on social media. Alabama Aloud is a production of Troy Public Radio and produced by Austin Toy and Kyle Gassett. Special thanks to Matt Clower, Buddy Johnson, Michelle Mowry, and Jennifer Horn. Alabama Aloud is made possible in part by a grant from Alabama State Council on the Arts. So, until next time, when you'll hear more of Alabama Read Aloud, I'm Don Noble. Thanks for listening.